Okay, what I have here is quite a large garage door. It's an older styled wooden one. And quite a few years ago, probably 12 or more, I installed this Craftsman door opener on it. And that quit working this spring. And I adjusted it and got it going again, tightened, made the adjustment so it would work give more pressure to the unit. And what I ended up finding out, part of the problem was with the springs up here. And I never realized this before doing this little project, but these springs, if you don't know, are under a lot of pressure. And what I ended up doing is going and buying about a 6-foot piece of steel bar. And as you can see, it will fit into these holes here on the part that is attached to the spring and tightens them. And never, ever undo these bolts or loosen these two bolts off without having a bar like this in here and being ready for a lot of torque being applied to this little square piece here once you loosen those off. So what I had to do was carefully, with these two bars, have them both in here and using one to turn and down, and you can slowly get it unwound. And it turns out that there's about 9 revolutions on this part here to tighten up the spring enough. And opening and closing the door, I felt there was a place where it sort of tended to jam, like the first fold going up would jam, and it turned out to be tightening in the, jamming up in the spring itself. The spring would wrap itself around the bar that's below, inside it, and it had gotten rusty. So I had to take all the tension off both of these springs, and then go to this part where they're both mounted on the to the door, or above the door, I should say, and undo those bolts and slide the whole spring over. And once I did that, I could see where the rust was on there, and I cleaned it off the inside pipe and put a bunch of grease on it. And then I also used some 40 weight oil on the spring itself to give the lubrication it needs so it would work more smoothly. And now the door is adjusted so it goes up and down as it should. Not too much weight on the bottom, not too much on the top, and it stops in the middle. So it's balanced now. And that was part of the problem as to why the actual garage door unit itself failed. And we'll go and have a look at that now. Okay, we got our Sears drive and worm gear kit. That's correct for the garage door opener I have. Just finished removing the old worn out gear and place the new one in its place. And you can't get it on backwards, it only goes on one way or the other. Either way around it, the gears are facing the right way. I punched out the rock pin with this center punch, and I put the new pin in using the vise. I just turned it in till it got pretty much flush, and then used a punch to finish that off. So now we're going to go into the rest of the door opener and replace the other worm gear. What I've done now is I've taken off all the parts for the worm gear that need to be replaced. I got my new worm gear on there, and the first is a shim that would go right up against here, and another spring shim, and then another washer, and then our little clamp here. And this clamp has 2 Allen wrenches on it. They're 1/8 inch, and they clamp onto the shaft. Now what you'll find probably is what I had a problem with, is getting this bronze bearing off after taking all that stuff off. It wouldn't come off. And what I had to do is just take a small file or some emery paper, whatever, and where the Allen wrenches went into the shaft, they raised it up a bit, so it was not easy to get it off. But once you file that smooth again, this piece will come off with little effort, and then you can take your plate off and replace the gear, like so. So once you have the new gear on, you just put that all back in the way opposite of the way you took it off. But it's important to sand down or file down with a fine file those ridges that are created by those Allen screws that hold everything in place, or else you'll have a hard time getting this bushing off. And that's another little tip on taking this apart. Once you got that all back together, you put it in reverse order and grease it, etc., and that piece will be done. Okay, this is inside the actual door opening unit itself. There's the new nylon spur gear and the worm gear on the other side that I replaced. It's all greased up, all set to go. And I put it all back together and turned on the power and went to cycle the unit through its on opening and closing. And what I saw right away was a poof, a blast of light, and it was like one of the circuits on the board went up in smoke. And what I did now is replace that burned out circuit with this piece of wire here. And another circuit actually got hot enough that it melted some of the green covering that holds it in place, so I put some silicone holding that down again. And what had happened is when I bolted back on this one nut here, I accidentally did not watch carefully enough, and the blue wire was underneath that bolt and grounded. So that is what burnt out that one part of my board. I'm hoping that's all that went wrong with the board, but this is a little thing that I didn't expect to have to do as well, but hopefully this board will work again. But everything is in position, ready to go. I'm going to bolt it back up and see how it works now. I'm really hoping it will work. But this all probably was started by, first of all, the lubrication from these gears after years gets worn away. And as I said, it certainly didn't help that the door itself was jamming at times. It wouldn't close or open all the way, and I didn't know why. And it was because of that one spring that was really binding up. You have to service these doors once in a while, lubricate them, and you'll never have to do that again probably. And we'll put it back together and we'll just see if the whole thing works now. Okay, I've got this thing all buttoned up, put together again, and now we'll just chains adjusted. And as you can see, the switch mechanism goes long, hits the bottom, and stops. The door's closed. I'll hit it again, back up it comes. Works just like it should again. Good as old. Better than old, maybe? Excellent. Stops just before this bolt here, which is the actual physical stop for it. All's good. Happy, happy, happy. Button it back together again.